The legal battles over reproductive rights. We'll look into the Texas case that threatens access to abortion medication. Plus, a battleground for LGBTQ rights. I connect with a leader in the Tennessee queer community about the state's efforts to restrict drag performances. And the circus on the Hill. George Santos may only be the tip of the iceberg. His response to new allegations and the cover story about the GOP and LGBTQ representation. Welcome to Advocate Today. I'm Tracy E. Gilchrist. A federal judge in Texas is holding a hearing on the biggest abortion-related case since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade last year. The case centers on abortion medication. Anti-abortion advocates are suing the FDA and asking the court to order the FDA to drop its approval of the drug. The move would essentially block its use nationwide, at least temporarily. The group is also challenging recent moves to make the abortion pill easier to obtain. Former federal prosecutor Jennifer Rogers says having a single judge weigh in on this case has not been seen before.
It's unprecedented. I mean, it would be unprecedented for a single judge, to say the FDA got it wrong 23 years ago. There's never been an instance where anyone has overturned the ruling of the FDA against the FDA's wishes. And the notion that it's been 23 years and the FDA has repeatedly reaffirmed the efficacy and safety of this drug makes it sort of ridiculous.
Reproductive rights advocates who are in favor of the medications say if the judge sides with the plaintiffs, it would eliminate the most commonly used method of abortion care. The FDA's efforts to approve mifepristone nationwide are being blocked partly because of safety fears, but the medication is considered safer than common low-risk prescription drugs. There were 5 deaths for every 1 million people in the U.S. who have used it since 2000. The death rate for penicillin is 4 times higher than mifepristone, and Viagra has a death rate 10 times higher. If the lawsuit is successful, 40 million more people who can be pregnant will lose access to medication abortion care. That's in addition to the 25 million women of reproductive age in states with abortion bans. Medication abortion is the most common method of abortion. It accounts for half of all the abortions in the country. Conservative lawmakers and judges across the country are pushing forward agendas that hurt several communities. The LGBTQ community is in the crosshairs of many legislators in red states, but there's work being done to fight back. Phil Cabucci is working with people on the ground to fight for LGBTQ visibility and rights in Tennessee. I caught up with the Inclusion Tennessee founder and president about the situation unfolding there and how it affects LGBTQ youth. Piece of this, everyone's talking about the drag bans, but I mean, there are trans youth who are immediately in peril from what's going on there.
Right. And I think the one thing to also keep in mind with that too is that the trans youth component, we thought that the interpretation of the law was going to allow trans youth at least 9 months after the law passed on July 1 to have time to transition to a new doctor out of state. But that the way that the legal is interpreting that law, especially for all the medical doctors in the state, is that you have to stop care on July 1, which puts a lot of these families in this space of like, oh God, we thought we had 9 months. Now we have 3 to figure out what we're going to do to ensure continued care for our young people. Okay, I think that the drag ban piece at the tail end is obviously important that we talk about, but then also that this law specifically goes into effect on July 1st in Tennessee. And as a result, we have youth in our state that have to find access to care somewhere else. And it's at a crisis point, right? Because there's so many of these laws happening and so much is happening so quickly that we're in this like rapid response phase of like, how quickly can we ensure that other trans adolescents have access to care and continued care, because essentially what the state is trying to do is force detransition
right
on trans youth.
Right. And would you talk a little bit about the incredibly negative outcomes of that being forced on trans youth?
I mean, there's significant negative outcomes for trans youth. Mm-hmm. If we're stopping puberty blockers, if we are stopping hormone therapies of any kind, there's a lot of science that shows that if we are doing these things the wrong way, that it's going to have lasting impact on trans youth. And if we're rushing things to be forcing a deep transition on a young person, or we are even going to have months of gaps in care, that the long-term health instances that this is going to have an impact on are dramatic, far and wide. And so
Great. Thank you. And then, Phil, I just wanted to give you an opportunity if there's something else you would like to touch on that we haven't discussed that you're working on currently or that is imminent in Tennessee.
I think the other big thing that we are working on right now is creating safe spaces for our community.
Yeah.
There is consistent worry, given the tone and tenor of the awful hatred that is occurring throughout the South, specifically towards LGBTQ lives, where there's so many folks in our community who just don't feel safe. They don't feel safe going outside. They don't feel safe bringing their families to a park. They don't feel safe just living here in Tennessee. And because of this rampant hate and this freedom to hate, and publicly, we just had an instance here in Nashville just a couple of weeks ago where Nazi flags were hung on one of our interstate overpasses. And so these are continuous things that are happening right in the heart of our cities and in our communities, where folks just don't feel safe to leave their home. And what we're focused on is creating those safe spaces, those respites, those places of care throughout the state of Tennessee that allow people to feel safe, to walk into a space where they fully are seen as who they are and know that they belong to something that's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for all the work that you're doing and for sharing that with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you so much to Phil for stopping by. The work being done by Inclusion Tennessee is incredibly important. The Love Rising Benefit Concert to support the LGBTQ plus community in the state is on March 20th at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. Tickets are available now. Well, he's the gift that keeps on giving. George Santos is back in the headlines for allegedly being part of a credit card scheme. Santos is denying claims that he taught a Brazilian man how to clone an ATM or credit card. That man claimed in a sworn FBI statement that Santos oversaw the skimming operation. Meanwhile, Santos is the focus of a new cover story for The Advocate, which is called Clown Show: Why Representative George Santos and the Idea of LGBTQ plus Republicans is Still a Joke. You can read about Santos, the challenges GOP leaders face with LGBTQ plus voters, and the history of Republican LGBTQ plus office holders dating back to the 1980s, and the lies those lawmakers told. Visit advocate.com for the full story. In Los Angeles, a former aide to former Mayor Eric Garcetti says Garcetti is unfit to become the U.S. ambassador to India. Naomi Seligman, who served as Garcetti's communications director, accuses the former mayor of ignoring allegations of sexual harassment when he was in office. Seligman said she was present when Garcetti witnessed his one-time deputy chief of staff and longtime political advisor touch people, hug people, and kiss people.
We were in a work environment where sexual harassment and abuse was tolerated, enabled, and ubiquitous. It was as common as checking your texts. It was a very hard, disappointing, and toxic environment where Mayor Garcetti enabled and tolerated and at times laughed about the abuse by his top aide and confidant, Rick Jacobs. It's not too late to say no to Eric Garcetti and to put someone in place who can actually represent our country overseas, who hasn't enabled sexual harassment and abuse. It's disappointing, but it's correctable.
Rick Jacobs has denied harassing anyone, but a civil lawsuit over those allegations remains ongoing. Garcetti has denied any knowledge of the allegations. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee approved Garcetti's nomination. Malala Yousafzai is the youngest Nobel Prize laureate. At 15, she was shot in the head by the Taliban while heading home from school. She was targeted for her advocacy for equal education opportunities. She recovered and continues to use her voice and champion human rights. Yousafzai's work in promoting equality for women and minority communities is an active reminder that love wins over hate. That's all the time we have for this Advocate Today. Our mission is to advocate for all. Visit the Advocate Channel homepage on YouTube or online at advocatechannel.com for more Advocate Today content and coverage. I'm Tracy E. Gilchrist. I'll see you next time.